At the prom, my girlfriend Leah asked me in front of everyone, "Can I have the first dance with Leo Miller?" I agreed, without hesitation. Leah immediately took Leo's hand. The music started, and the two danced gracefully. I turned and walked away. Not long after leaving the school grounds, Leah called. "Leo is shy and too nervous to dance with other girls, that's why I dance with him. If you get jealous again, we're breaking up." I just smiled. She didn't know that just one day earlier, I had applied to a different university than her. I was already planning to break up with her anyway. Leah wore a long white dress, its skirt embroidered with delicate silver threads. Under the lights, she looked like a fairy stepping out of a fairy tale. When she walked in, arm in arm with me, all eyes were on us, filled with envy. A few guys even gave me a thumbs up, muttering things like, "Ethan, you lucky bastard." But I couldn't feel happy at all. From the moment we stepped into the hall, Leah's attention wasn't on me. She kept her head down, staring at her phone, tapping it open and closing it repeatedly. I offered her a glass of juice, which she took but didn't drink. She casually placed it on a nearby table, her eyes still glued to the screen. I knew she was waiting for someone. Leo Miller, the guy who transferred to our class a year ago. He came from a tough background. His mother was constantly ill, and his father worked odd jobs to make ends meet. Leah, for some reason, had voluntarily signed up for the school's mentorship program and became Leo's contact person. At first, it was just helping him apply for scholarships and sending him study materials. Later, it turned into eating meals together, studying together, and walking around the track together. Some friends had warned me, saying Leah was being too nice to Leo. I remember saying it was fine, that she was just kind-hearted. But the line between kindness and genuine feelings can be incredibly thin sometimes. 10 minutes before the dance began, Leo finally arrived. He wore a dark blue suit, nothing fancy, but it was clean and neat. His hair was carefully styled, making him look quite different from his usual self. The moment Leah saw him, a smile instantly bloomed on her face. I knew that smile all too well. It wasn't polite, it wasn't courteous, it was the kind where her eyes truly lit up. "I thought you weren't coming," she said, walking toward him, a hint of a playful whine in her voice. "Sorry, I got held up on the way." Leo chuckled, pulling a small box from his pocket and handing it to her. "For you." Leah opened it. Inside was a bracelet. A simple knot woven from a light pink string, with a few white beads threaded through the middle. The material and craftsmanship looked like something you'd find at a flea market for $10. But she loved it. "It's so pretty." She lowered her head and began to unfasten the Givenchy bracelet from her own wrist. That bracelet was a gift from me. A platinum chain with a small, dark green enamel pendant. I had arranged for someone to bring it back from Paris for her 16th birthday and personally clasped it around her wrist. That day, she said something I remember to this day. "Ethan, I'll wear this forever and never take it off." Now she was taking it off, so naturally, so casually. She raised her hand, admiring the cheap, handmade beaded bracelet in the light, a gentle curve on her lips. Leah beamed like a girl who'd just received her favorite candy. I looked at the bracelet she'd removed, and a dull thud echoed in my chest. No pain, just a heavy ache. I turned my face away, not wanting to see it anymore. "Ethan," Leah said, her voice light, as if discussing something inconsequential, "I want to dance the first dance with Leo. Is that okay?" Before I could reply, Leo spoke up. "Leah, are you sure about this?" he said, his brow slightly furrowed, his tone perfectly pitched with hesitation. "Ethan's your boyfriend. The first dance should be yours." As he spoke, his eyes briefly flickered to me, then back to Leah. There was a thin layer of smugness hidden in that gaze, like an undercurrent beneath the surface of still water. He thought he was hiding it well, but everyone could see it. Leah didn't look at Leo. She just watched me, waiting for my reaction. She probably expected me to frown, to ask, "Are you serious?" She probably expected me to throw a tantrum, like the last time she went to the movies alone with Leo. "He just learned ballroom dancing, and he's nervous about dancing with other girls," Leah added, as if offering me an out. "You know his situation. We can't just leave him standing there watching, can we?" I didn't argue, I didn't make a scene. I just looked at her, for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, a lot of things flashed through my mind. I remembered the first time I saw her, when we were 3 years old. I remembered her shining eyes on her birthday, when I helped her put on the bracelet. I remembered the countless times she'd talked about her plans for Harvard University. We applied to the same school, the same major. She talked about riding bikes around campus together, grabbing snacks. She always smiled beautifully when she said those things, and I always believed they were real. 3 seconds passed. I took a step back, silently giving up my place. Leah paused, surprised by my easy agreement. Her eyes held a hint of shock, even a touch of confusion, as if I'd thrown her off her script. But that surprise lasted less than 2 seconds before her attention returned to Leo. She took his hand and walked onto the dance floor. The music began, a slow waltz. The two danced gracefully. Leah's white dress flowed like water in the lights, her steps light and airy. Leo's movements were a bit stiff, occasionally missing a beat, clearly a beginner. But Leah didn't care. She looked up at him, her eyes full of smiles. Everyone around them was watching. Some whispered, some took out their phones to snap pictures, and some searched for me. I could feel their gazes sweeping over me, filled with confusion and sympathy. I didn't look back. I turned and walked towards the hall exit. The night air was chilly as it swept in. As I walked out of the school gates, I instinctively touched the watch Leah had given me on my wrist. The strap was old, the leather starting to crack. I looked down at it, smiled, but didn't take it off. Not because I cherished it, but because it didn't matter anymore. My phone screen lit up with a message from Leah. I tapped it open, but didn't rush to read the content. First, I checked the time. A dance song usually lasts about 3 minutes. Adding in a minute for her and Leo to chat after their dance, it was exactly the right time for her to be free to contact me. I told you Leo's shy, and he just learned ballroom dancing. He's nervous to dance with other girls. Can you please get over your irrational jealousy? Otherwise, when we get to Harvard, I won't dare tell anyone you're my boyfriend. Each message ended with an exclamation mark, each one delivered in that familiar, condescending, scolding tone. As if I had done something wrong again, overreacted again, and should apologize. I read them twice, then smiled. She didn't know that just one day earlier, I had changed my Harvard application, switching to Stanford University instead. It was the most decisive choice I'd ever made in my life. Back home, I started clearing out everything related to her. A stack of ticket stubs, a jar filled with folded paper stars, and over a dozen birthday cards. Her messy handwriting, from elementary school to high school, always addressed to Ethan. I piled all these things into a large cardboard box. Then the wall. The photo of us at 15, standing outside the school in our school gear, her smile so sweet, me half a head taller than her. By my bed, a clumsy little ceramic cat she'd made herself. She'd said it looked like my face. I held that little cat in my hand for 2 seconds, then tossed it in two. The box was nearly full, but I didn't seal it immediately. For every item inside, I could tell a story. One movie ticket stub was from the 3D re-release of Titanic. She cried so much during it. She leaned on my shoulder, wiping away tears, saying we couldn't end up like Jack and Rose. One amusement park ticket was from a summer trip. She insisted on riding the roller coaster. Then halfway through, she squeezed my arm so hard it left 5 bruises, making me wince. And a scarf she knitted in middle school. The stitches were uneven, with loose threads everywhere, but she insisted it was the prettiest scarf in the whole class. The box was overflowing, full of her traces. 15 years of traces, from 3 to 17, my entire youth. My phone suddenly vibrated, not a call, but a social media notification. I tapped it open and saw that Leo Miller had just posted on Instagram, with 2 pictures. The first was a hotel room. Dim, yellowish lighting, white sheets. The second was a close-up of a pair of crystal high heels. The shoes lay tilted on the carpet, one upside down, sole facing up. I recognized those shoes instantly. Last year, for Leah's birthday, I'd saved 3 months of allowance and borrowed money from my dad to buy them. The Swarovski crystal logo was visible on the sole. They were size 6, a perfect fit. She'd walked around the room in them several times when she first tried them on, saying they were the most beautiful high heels she'd ever worn. Leo's caption read, "She said she drank too much and insisted I take her back to the hotel. Exhausting." Below, a flurry of comments. "Dude, you're so lucky. A goddess just throwing herself at you. Those shoes aren't simple, and neither is the girl wearing them." I stared at the shoes for a few seconds. I walked back to the cardboard box and wrapped sealing tape around it 3 times. I picked up the box, went downstairs, and threw it into the garbage bin outside our mansion. It landed with a muffled thud, then silence. In the following days, Leah didn't send a single text or call. I was glad for the peace. A week later, our class rep, Chloe, sent a message in the group chat, suggesting a class dinner. She specifically DM'd me, insisting I had to come. She was Leah's best friend, inseparable since freshman year. I could pretty much guess what she was trying to do. I told her I was busy, didn't have time. "Oh, come on, you've already applied to universities. What could you possibly be busy with? You have to come, or don't call me your friend anymore." At 5 in the afternoon, I arrived at the restaurant's private room. I was about to knock, but my hand paused. Not because I was nervous, but because I heard my own name. That night, when you danced the first dance with Leo, weren't you worried Ethan would get jealous? Leah's voice carried a laugh and a careless indifference. Worried about what? I fully expected it. He needs to be taught a lesson for that awful temper of his. He's so bossy and controlling, he doesn't give me any freedom. What's the big deal if I dance with someone else? It's not like I'll lose a limb. Someone else asked, but what if Ethan actually got angry? He's got so much going for him, and plenty of girls are after him, right? Leah chuckled again. Ethan and I have been childhood sweethearts for over 15 years. I know exactly what kind of person he is better than anyone. Don't worry, he's just throwing a little tantrum. He'll be fine in a few days. Just like last time, when I insisted on going to the movies with Leo. She paused, then added, her tone even lighter. Even if the sky fell, he would never break up with me. Of that, I am 100% certain. I stood outside the door, feeling no heartache, no anger, just exhaustion. It was the kind of exhaustion you feel after walking a very, very long road, finally reaching the finish line. She was right. I had argued, I had made scenes, but I had never brought up breaking up. Every time she crossed a line, every time she pushed my boundaries like they were elastic, every time she'd ask with a sly smile, "You won't get mad, right?" I always gave in, not because I had no temper, but because I loved her. But now I knew that in her eyes, my patience wasn't tolerance. It was proof that my boundaries could be endlessly retreated. She took my goodness towards her as proof that I couldn't live without her. Just as I was about to turn and leave, someone patted my shoulder from behind. "Ethan, why aren't you going in?" Leo Miller smiled at me. Before I could answer, he already pushed the door open. Everyone in the private room looked towards the entrance. Leah was sitting directly opposite the door, with an empty seat next to her. She saw me, paused for a moment, then quickly composed herself, even offering a small smile. Chloe was the first to react, standing up and waving me over. "Ethan's here? Come in, we were just waiting for you guys." Leo half pushed, half coaxed me into the room. Chloe grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the empty seat next to Leah. I didn't sit, saying I'd just stand for a bit. Chloe wouldn't have it, telling me to listen to her and firmly pressing me down into the chair. Leah looked up at me and softly said, "You're here?" Her tone was natural, as if nothing had happened. On her wrist, the Givenchy bracelet was back. The platinum chain shimmered slightly under the lights, the dark green enamel pendant resting against her slender wrist bone. But right next to the bracelet, there was a faint indentation, left by that cheap beaded string. Two marks pressed together, one new, one old. I said nothing, lowering my head to eat. I mechanically chewed my food, swallowed. The table was lively. Chloe bustled around pouring drinks, someone cut the cake, and others cheered, urging the birthday girl to make a wish. Leah was chatting with Leo, her laughter echoing intermittently. I didn't look at them, didn't speak. The private dining room of the Golden Harbor restaurant smelled of boiled vinegar, garlic, and the damp, metallic tang of keeping live seafood in plastic tanks. It was a place where families celebrated anniversaries, but tonight the high school class of graduating seniors had claimed the largest circular table. Chloe was in her element, pouring sweet plum wine into plastic cups, her laughter vibrating against the heavy faux mahogany walls. Next to her, Leo sat, with his shoulders slightly hunched, his dark blue suit jacket draped over the back of his chair. He looked small, but there was a quiet, self-satisfied stillness about him. Every few minutes, his eyes would drift to Leah, then to me, testing the temperature of the room. Leah sat beside me, her shoulder barely brushing mine. She hadn't changed out of her prom dress from the week before, but today she wore a simple pale blue blouse and white trousers. On her left wrist, the platinum Givenchy chain caught the light of the rotating Lazy Susan. Every time she reached for the teapot, the small green enamel pendant clinked against her porcelain cup. "Ethan," Leo said, his voice cutting through the chatter of the table. He was holding a glass of Sprite, his fingers tapping against the glass. I wanted to say thank you again for the dance. I know it must have looked unusual from the outside, but I really appreciate you being so understanding about my lack of rhythm. The table went slightly quiet. Several classmates turned their heads, their chopsticks hovering over plates of steamed sea bass and braised tofu. They were waiting for the explosion. They were waiting for the Ethan they knew, the one who would have gritted his teeth, made a sharp remark about charity, and gripped Leah's hand a little too tightly. I didn't look up from my plate. I was dissecting a small piece of roasted duck, carefully separating the fat from the meat. "Don't worry about it," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. It was just a dance. Leah's hand paused on her teacup. She turned her head to look at me, her brow furrowing slightly. She was waiting for the but. She was waiting for the sigh, the cold shoulder, the silent treatment that usually followed these exchanges. Just a dance? Chloe chimed in, trying to bridge the sudden awkwardness with a nervous chuckle. Well, it was beautiful anyway. Leah looked like an absolute princess. But honestly, Ethan, you're the real saint here. Most guys would have started a fistfight right there on the gym floor. I'm not most guys, I said. I took a bite of the duck. It was a bit dry, the skin lacking the crispness it usually had. And it's a public event. People should dance with whoever they want. Leo smiled, a tiny, fleeting twitch of his lips that vanished before anyone else could catch it. He reached for the serving spoon, scooping some mapo tofu onto Leah's plate. Here, Leah. You love this one. Thanks, she murmured, but her eyes remained on me. She looked confused. In the 15 years we had grown up together, she had learned to read every shift in my posture, every micro-expression on my face. She knew the exact shade of red my ears turned when I was holding back anger. But right now, my ears were pale. My shoulders were loose. I was eating duck, like I was alone in a library. Ethan, she whispered, leaning in so only I could hear. Are you still doing that thing? What thing? I asked, turning to her. The silent protest, she said, her voice laced with a familiar, weary irritation. You're acting like a stranger. If you're still mad about the prom, just say it. Don't do this passive-aggressive act in front of my friends. It's embarrassing. I'm not mad, Leah, I said. I looked directly into her eyes. Those dark, clear eyes that I used to think held the entire universe. Now they just looked like glass. I'm just eating dinner. She stared at me for 3 seconds, trying to find the lie. When she couldn't find it, she sat back, her expression hardening. Fine. Have it your way. See how long you can keep this up. I didn't answer. I reached for my water glass and drank. The dinner dragged on for another hour. It was a slow suffocation. As the night wore on, the conversation drifted, as it always did these days, to the future. Boston is going to be so cold, Chloe groaned, leaning back in her chair. But you two are going to have the absolute best time. Harvard Yard in the snow. It's literally a movie. I'm so jealous I could throw up. It's not that cold, Leah said, though she smiled, her chest swelling slightly with pride. We've already looked at some apartments off campus. My dad wants us to stay in the dorms for the first semester, but we're thinking of finding a small place near the square by spring. She used we so naturally, so effortlessly, as if our futures were two vines that had grown so tightly around each other they could no longer be untangled, without killing both. What about you, Leo? Someone asked from the end of the table. Did you hear back from your state school? Leo set his glass down, his expression turning humble, almost sheepish. Yeah, I got the financial aid package yesterday. It covers most of the tuition, but I'll still need to work 20 hours a week to cover rent and books. It's a lot, but I'm used to working. Leah's eyes immediately softened. She looked at him with that intense, protective maternal instinct she had developed over the past year. You'll do great, Leo. You're the smartest person in our class. If they had proper funding for the mentorship program, you wouldn't even have to worry about this. It's fine, Leah, Leo said softly, giving her a look of profound, silent gratitude. I'm just glad I had you to help me through the applications. I wouldn't even have known how to fill out the FAFSA without you. That's what friends are for, she said. I looked down at my watch. The leather strap was indeed fraying, a small thread hanging loose near the buckle. I pinched the thread and pulled. It resisted for a second, then snapped, leaving a tiny, raw white patch on the brown leather. I stood up. Going to the bathroom? Leah asked, her hand instinctively reaching out to touch my sleeve. No, I said, pulling my arm back just enough to avoid her fingers. I'm heading home. I have some things to take care of. But we haven't even had the dessert, Chloe protested. The fried banana with ice cream is coming. I'm good, thanks, I said. I pulled out my wallet, took out a $50 bill, more than enough to cover my share of the dinner and the tip, and laid it flat on the table. Enjoy the rest of the night, guys. Leah's face flushed. Ethan, stop it. You're being ridiculous. Congratulations on graduating, everyone, I said, nodding to the table. I turned and walked out. The restaurant hallway was long and lined with gold-framed mirrors. As I walked, I could see my own reflection, tall, slightly lean, wearing a simple, black jacket. I didn't look like a guy who had just lost his childhood. Sweetheart. I looked like a guy who was finally walking out of a movie theater after realizing the film was a cheap, boring remake. Ethan. The door to the private room banged open, and the sound of Leah's heels clicked rapidly against the tile floor. She caught up to me near the lobby, her breath coming in short, irritated gasps. "What is your problem?" she demanded, grabbing my shoulder. Her fingers dug into the fabric of my jacket. "You've been acting like a corpse all night. You didn't talk to anyone. You barely looked at me, and now you're leaving early? In front of Chloe? In front of Leo? I told you I have things to do," I said, turning to face her. The lobby was empty save for a young hostess who was busy wiping down the reception desk and pretending not to listen. "What things? Your dad's office? You're 18, Ethan. You don't have a corporate job yet." She threw her hands up, her voice rising in pitch. "Is this because of Leo's Instagram post? Is that it?" I stared at her. "Which post?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering with a momentary flash of guilt before she recovered her defensive stance. "The one with the shoes. Chloe told me you saw it. It's not what it looks like. I drank way too much at the after party. I couldn't even stand up. Leo was just being nice. He took me to a motel nearby because he didn't want my parents to see me like that and get me grounded. He just put me on the bed, took off those heels because my feet were swollen, and left. He slept on the chair in the lobby. He took a photo of your shoes," I said. "And he posted it with a caption that made sure everyone in our class thought you two slept together." "He's naive, Ethan. He doesn't understand social media like we do," she argued, her voice desperate, pleading. "He thought it was funny. He didn't mean anything by it." "I made him take it down the next morning, didn't I?" "He didn't take it down because you asked," I said. "He took it down because he knew I'd seen it. He got exactly what he wanted." "And what is that?" "What did he get?" "He got to show me that he could touch the things I bought for you," I said, my voice dead calm. "And that you wouldn't care." Leah shook her head, tears of frustration finally welling in her eyes. "You're so paranoid. You're so controlling. I can't even have a friend who is poor and struggling without you turning it into some sick drama. We've been together for 15 years, Ethan. Do you really think I'd throw that away for a guy who lives in a 2-room apartment with his sick mom?" She said it with such casual classism, such deep-seated arrogance. In her mind, Leo was a stray dog she was feeding, and I was the expensive purebred she owned. She couldn't comprehend that the stray dog was slowly biting through her leash. "No," I said softly. "I don't think you'd throw it away. I think you thought you could have both." "What?" "You wanted my security, my family status, the apartment in Boston, the 15 years of history," I said. "And you wanted the thrill of being Leo's savior. You wanted to feel like a saint while he looked at you like you were God." Leah's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The truth of it, laid out so coldly, seemed to stun her. "I'm leaving, Leah," I said. "Ethan, wait." "Go back inside," I said, turning my back on her. "Your mapo tofu is getting cold." 2 weeks passed like dry sand through an hourglass. I spent my days packing. When you live in one house for 17 years, you accumulate a terrifying amount of junk. I sorted through old textbooks, middle school track medals, and drawers full of clothes I'd outgrown. My mother came into my room one afternoon, holding a basket of clean laundry. She looked at the stacks of cardboard boxes lined up against the wall, each one labeled with black Sharpie, "Stanford dorm." "You're sure about this, Ethan?" she asked, her voice soft, carrying that quiet maternal worry. "Your father was looking forward to seeing you at Harvard. He'd already talked to some of his old fraternity brothers about getting you into the club." "I'm sure, Mom," I said, sealing another box with heavy brown tape. The sound of the tape gun ripping through the quiet room was loud, satisfying. "The weather is better in California. And the computer science program at Stanford is exactly what I want," she sighed, setting the laundry down on my bed. Did you tell Leah?" "No. Ethan, you two have been—" "We're not anymore, Mom," I said, not looking up. "It's over." She didn't press further. She knew me well enough to know that when I made up my mind, there was no bending me back. She just patted my shoulder and left the room, leaving behind the clean, artificial scent of lavender fabric softener. The school portal officially released the final graduation registry and enrollment confirmations on a Tuesday. It was a hot, muggy morning. I was sitting in my car in the school parking lot, waiting to pick up my physical diploma folder from the main office. My phone was on the dashboard, silent. Suddenly, it began to vibrate. Then it vibrated again. And again. A barrage of messages from the class group chat popped up. Chloe. Wait, is this a typo on the main board? Marcus. Yo. Ethan. What the hell? Sarah. Did Ethan not get into Harvard? I thought he had a legacy spot? Chloe. No, look at the registry. It says confirmed enrollment. Stanford University. A second later, Leah's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Within 10 seconds, she called again. I declined it. Then came the text. I'm at your house. Your mom said you're at the school. Don't you dare run away from me. I turned off the phone, slipped it into my pocket, and got out of the car. The main hallway of the high school was empty, the lockers bare and gray under the flickering fluorescent lights. The giant blue banner hung near the administrative office, listing the names of the graduating class of 2026 and their next destinations in neat, gold letters. I saw her before she saw me. Leah was standing in front of the board, her hair slightly messy, her face pale. She was holding a rolled-up piece of paper, her own transcript, so tightly that her knuckles were white. When she heard my footsteps, she whipped around. Her eyes were red, her chest heaving as if she had run all the way from my house. Why? She whispered, her voice cracking in the empty hallway. Why is your name under Stanford, Ethan? Because that's where I'm going, I said, stopping 5 feet away from her. But the apartment, she stammered, her voice shaking, her hands trembling as she held up her phone. The lease. I already talked to the landlord. My dad signed the cosigner form yesterday. We were supposed to go look at it next week. Why did you change it? Why didn't you tell me? I changed it the day after the prom, I said. She blinked, the color draining completely from her face. The day after? I realized I didn't want to go to Boston, I said. And I didn't want to go with you. Are you insane? She screamed, her voice bouncing off the metal lockers loud and shrill. Over a dance? You're ruining our lives over a single dance? We've been planning this since we were 12 years old, Ethan. 12. You promised me we'd walk through those gates together. You promised. You promised you'd never take off that bracelet, I said quietly, pointing to her wrist. She looked down. The Givenchy chain was there, but her skin was bare of the pink string. I took it off. I threw it away. I told you I don't care about Leo. He's nothing to me. Why can't you see that? If he was nothing to you, I said, you wouldn't have let him stand between us. For a year. You wouldn't have let him hold your hand on the dance floor while I stood there like an idiot. You wouldn't have let him post a picture of your shoes on a motel floor. It was a mistake, she sobbed, taking a step toward me, reaching out to grab my shirt. I was stupid. I wanted to make you jealous because you've been so distant lately. I wanted to feel like you still cared enough to fight for me. I looked at her face, her tears, the desperate, panicked curve of her mouth. For 15 years, this face had been my anchor. If she cried, I would do anything to make her stop. If she was hurt, I would bleed to heal her. But now, looking at her, I felt nothing but a profound, empty silence. I did care, Leah, I said softly. But you kept pushing the wall back to see how far you could go. You thought I'd always be there, waiting at the finish line, no matter how many detours you took. I love you, she wept, her forehead resting against my chest as she clutched my jacket. Ethan, please, don't do this. I'll change my application. I'll apply to Berkeley or San Jose or anywhere near you. We can still be together. Please. I gently, but firmly, took her wrists and peeled her hands off my jacket. Don't do that, I said. Go to Harvard. It's your dream. Don't ruin it for someone who doesn't want to be with you anymore. No, no, no. She rocked back and forth, her hands covering her face as she wept. You can't do this. You can't just throw me away. I'm not throwing you away, Leah, I said, stepping back, out of her reach. You threw me away a long time ago. You just didn't expect me to land so far away from you. I turned and walked toward the administrative office to get my diploma. I didn't look back, even though the sound of her crying echoed down the hallway for a long, long time. By mid-July, the heat in our hometown had become oppressive. The asphalt on the roads was soft, sticky, and the air smelled of dry grass and dust. I had stopped checking social media entirely. I had blocked Leah, Chloe, and Leo on every platform. My phone was a clean slate, used only for coordinating with my future roommate, Marcus, who had ended up going to UC Santa Cruz just an hour away from Stanford, and reading academic prep materials. But news in a small town has a way of finding you, even if you build a wall against it. I was at a local diner, grabbing a burger with my dad before he went back to the office, when Chloe walked in. She was alone, wearing a tennis skirt and carrying a large iced tea. When she saw me, she hesitated. She looked like she wanted to turn around and walk out, but her curiosity, or perhaps her loyalty to Leah, won. She walked over to our booth. "Hi, Mr. Vance," she said politely to my dad, then turned her sharp, accusing eyes to me. "Ethan." "Chloe," I said, taking a sip of my soda. "Can I talk to him for a second, Mr. Vance?" she asked. My dad looked at me, saw my nod, and stood up, taking his briefcase. "I'll wait. In the car, Ethan. Take your time." Once my dad was out of earshot, Chloe slid into the booth opposite me. She didn't waste any time. "You're a monster, you know that?" she said, her voice a harsh whisper. "Leah hasn't left her room in 3 weeks. She's barely eating. Her mom is terrified. She's going to defer her enrollment at Harvard because she's too depressed to go." "She should go," I said. "It's a great school." "How can you be so cold?" Chloe hissed, her fingers clenching her iced tea cup. 15 years, Ethan. You two are the perfect couple. Everyone looked up to you. And you just cut her off like she was a stranger. Over Leo? You know what's happening with Leo now?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't particularly care." "He's a nightmare," Chloe said, a sudden look of disgust crossing her face. "The second you left, he started acting like he owned her. He showed up at her house with some cheap flowers, telling her that now that the rich kid was gone, they could finally be together. When she told him to leave her alone, he got angry. He started telling everyone at school that she'd used him to make you jealous, that she was a tease." She paused, looking at me to see if I'd react. I didn't. "He even tried to threaten her," Chloe continued, her voice dropping. "He said he had more photos from that night at the motel. He told her if she didn't help him pay for his college housing deposit, he'd post them. Her dad had to get a lawyer involved to send him a cease and desist letter. He's a parasite, Ethan. And Leah is suffering because of him." "Leah is suffering because of her own choices," I said, my voice steady. "She invited him into her life. She used him to test my limits, and she let him think he had a chance so she could feel wanted. She played a game, Chloe. She just didn't realize the pieces could move on their own." Chloe stared at me, her mouth slightly open. You really don't care anymore, do you?" "No," I said. "I don't. You used to love her more than anything." "I did," I said. "But that Ethan is gone." I packed him into one of those cardboard boxes and threw him in the trash. I stood up, slid some cash onto the table to cover my bill, and nodded to her. "Tell Leah I hope she goes to Boston. It's a clean slate. She needs one." The flight to San Francisco was smooth. As the plane tilted over the bay, I looked out the window at the salt ponds, vibrant, strange patches of red, yellow, and green water cut into neat, geometric shapes. They looked like a painting, beautiful but entirely artificial. When I landed, the air was different. It was cool, carrying the sharp, salty tang of the Pacific and the clean scent of eucalyptus trees. It didn't smell like the humid, dusty air of my childhood. My dorm room at Stanford was small, with 2 twin beds, 2 desks, and a window that looked out over a grassy courtyard where students were already throwing frisbees. My roommate, Marcus, was a tall, energetic guy from Chicago with a wide, easy smile. He was already there, unpacking a massive collection of sneakers. "Yo, Ethan, right?" he said, throwing his hand out for a shake. "Men, Claire, you're here." I was worried I'd get stuck with some weirdo who studies 24 hours a day. "I do study a lot," I said, smiling as I shook his hand. "But I also like to sleep." "That's fine, as long as you don't mind me playing FIFA at 2 a.m. with the volume on low," he laughed. "We're going to get along great." The next few weeks were a blur of orientation, campus tours, and the dizzying, exhilarating feeling of being completely anonymous. Nobody here knew who Ethan Vance was. Nobody knew about the 15-year romance that had shattered on a high school gym floor. Nobody knew about the crystal high heels or the Da Vinci bracelet. To them, I was just Ethan, the guy who was good at Python and always had a spare charging cable. I started running in the mornings. The air at 6 a.m. was cold enough to make my lungs burn, the fog rolling in over the hills and cloaking the red-tiled roofs of the campus in a quiet, white shroud. As I ran, my feet hitting the pavement in a steady, rhythmic beat, I felt the last of the heavy, dull ache in my chest slowly dissolve. It didn't happen all at once. It happened in tiny, imperceptible pieces with every mile I ran, with every line of code I wrote, with every laugh I shared with Marcus over terrible dining hall food. One evening in October, I was sitting in the library, working on a data structures assignment. The desk was covered in scratched paper, my laptop screen glowing in the dim light of the study cubicle. My phone, lying face down on the desk, vibrated. It was an email notification. Usually, I'd ignore it, but the sender's address was a Harvard student domain. Sender, L_Lynn at Harvard. Edu subject. No subject. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The library was quiet, save for the soft clicking of keyboards and the distant rustle of pages turning. I tapped the email open. There was no text in the body of the email, only an attachment. I downloaded the file. It was a photo. It was a picture of the Charles River in Boston. The trees along the bank were bright orange and red, the water gray, and still under a cloudy autumn sky. In the foreground, sitting on the stone wall of the riverbank, was a small, dusty, ceramic cat. The clumsy, lopsided little cat she had made in middle school. The one she'd said looked like my face. She must have gone into the trash bin behind my house after I threw it away. She must have dug through the cardboard box, found it, and carried it all the way to Boston with her. I stared at the photo for a long time. I looked at the little cat, sitting alone on the cold stone, looking out over a river 3,000 miles away from me. I felt a faint, ghost-like pull in my chest, the echo of a boy who would have crossed oceans to keep her warm. But the boy wasn't there anymore. He had died in a high school lobby, under the smell of steamed sea bass and cheap plum wine. I closed the email. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply to it. I just moved it into an archive folder labeled old, closed my laptop, and went back to my scratch paper. Outside, the California wind rustled through the palm trees, dry and warm, carrying the promise of another clear, bright morning.